Naruto Uzumaki stomped out of the Hokage's tower in a bad mood. He had felt confident that he would be promoted to genin rank this time, after failing the previous year. Damn Bunshin. He muttered under his breath. It wasn't his fault that every time he attempted it, the sick-looking copy seemed to be a balloon of Naruto himself that was only half filled with air. It was even slightly transparent, which kind of sickened Naruto and caused everyone who saw the failed attempt to laugh. The failure of a copy would then always proceed to slump to the ground as if it had no skeleton to hold it up and would lie on the ground like a pile of something. Naruto put his hands behind his head as he sighed. How could he even become a shinobi if he couldn't perform the Bunshin properly? It was a standard set by the academy. Suddenly, Naruto then remembered his dream to become Hokage, and it lit a fire of inspiration for him. Yada! I'm going to become Hokage! He yelled, punching the air. The Hokage was powerful and never gave up. Just like his idol, the Yondaime. Naruto gazed up at the Hokage monuments on the cliff. I will join you there, mark my words forth. Naruto thought. Naruto started on his way to the cliff to train when his stomach growled loudly. Oh well, you're gonna have to wait then forth. Naruto said. He took out Gama-chan and counted was inside. Yes. Thanks Oji-chan. Naruto punched the air again. Ichiraku. Here I come. He yelled happily. Once he entered Ichiraku Ramen, he was greeted by Ayame and Teuchi. Since he almost ate every meal there if possible, father and daughter had practically accepted him as part of their family. Even if the village disapproved. No sooner had he sat down, Teuchi landed a large pork miso bowl in front of Naruto before preparing seconds. Nothing made him happier than seeing the little boy with blonde hair gulp down almost everything thrown his way. He was comforted by the fact that the blonde was happy with his meal. The store owner then looked up to see a civilian walk into the store. The immediate scowl that he gave to Naruto did not escape the chef's attention. He watched angrily as the older man stormed out to look for somewhere else to eat. He couldn't figure out what everyone hated about Naruto. The boy was young and alone, having lost both his parents to the Kyuubi no Kitsune 11 years ago. Yes, it had been devastating. Yes, Naruto had been born on that day, but why did most of the villagers and older shinobi especially seem to hate the boy? He would not have any of it under his roof. Teuchi swore that in his own way, he would make Naruto happy. Arigato, old man. Naruto dropped the money on the cashier. What the old man did next surprised Naruto. He took the money and handed it back. But old man, I can't take that. That's payment for the food. The old man closed his hand over Naruto's. And this is my payment for you choosing to eat here, now go do something useful with that money. The joy on Naruto's face melted the man's heart as he watched the orange blur streak away towards the shops. Best of luck, Naruto. The old man wished. Naruto was incredibly happy. The old man had given him a free meal. And now he had extra pocket money. He ignored most of the hateful glares directed at him. He had grown somewhat used to it, but that didn't stop the pain that clenched his chest. Worse still, was when they completely ignored him. As if his existence meant nothing. At least he was getting some kind of attention when they were mad, but when they ignored him, the blonde boy never felt more alone. In the midst of these thoughts, something caught his eye and the little boy stared in awe at the mask. For some reason he found its fox face design interesting. The entire mask was black with red markings that spiraled around it. The next second, however, a bewildered Naruto found himself sprawled painfully on the street outside. Hey! What's your problem, Baka? Naruto yelled back into the shop, shaking his fist. Get out of my sight, monster, before I send you back to hell. A large man inside the store yelled so ferociously that Naruto wavered a bit. What did I do? I was only looking at the mask. Naruto protested angrily. The man swore before grabbing the mask. You want this? Take it. Now leave. The man snapped. Naruto stared at the crowd that had stopped to watch the scene. He looked into their eyes and saw the hate pouring out, even if their faces were impassive. If it had just been one of them, it would have been understandable. But it was everyone. The blonde boy felt tears stream into his eyes. Why? Why do you all look at me with those eyes? Naruto said softly. What? The man bellowed. Speak up, dirt child. I said, why are you all looking at me with those eyes? I'll show you. I'm gonna be a better Hokage than the Yondaime, then you will have to respect me. Naruto screamed back, up on his feet and glaring defiantly. You dare insult the Yondaime? He was a hero. A brat like you will never even live up to his shadow. The man roared and grabbed a sword that had been leaning next to his stool before rushing headfirst at Naruto, his intention to maim or kill the boy crystal clear. Naruto was paralyzed in shock. He stared in fear at the giant about to stab him. He knew he should move, but his body didn't seem to be responding. He closed his eyes and waited for the pain that was sure to come and was surprised when it didn't. He opened his eyes again to see a woman holding the man's arm, halting his rampage. Then the man swore as his sword arm lay helplessly at his side. Damn Hyuga. You're all so stuck up and think you're so mighty. We don't spend our free time trying to kill children. The Hyuga stated in a calm voice. It was the type of calm that won't send shivers down someone's spine. And on that matter, I think I have a right to remove your arm for attempting such a deed. The calm in the voice as she said it made the man cower and run back to his store in fear. She was a shinobi, he stood no chance. The Hyuga then looked at Naruto, who gazed up at her with a puzzled look on his face that suggested he wanted to know why she had helped him. Don't worry, little one, I am your friend. Her voice had softened up now and so had her face, making her look very gentle and kind. Don't you hate me? He asked her curiously. Why would I hate the one who saved my daughter? The Hyuga asked kindly. She stepped to the side to reveal the small girl clutching her mother's robe while her other hand was nervously clenched into a fist she held above her chest. Hinata-chan. Naruto said, surprised. This is your mother. Arigato, auntie. Hi, Naruto-kun, she kept looking at the ground, before stealing glances at Naruto and turning red. Hitomi laughed at the display her daughter was giving before laughing even harder at the fact that Naruto seemed completely oblivious to it. Naruto thanked her before picking up the mask and heading towards the cliff. Hitomi noticed her daughter staring after him. You like him, don't you? Hitomi teased, poking her daughter in the side. Hinata turned an even darker red. SSSHH mother, Hinata looked around nervously, someone might hear you. Hitomi hugged her daughter. It's our little secret then, isn't it? Hinata nodded before bursting into red again. 2 hours later. Naruto collapsed on the Yondaime's head. He had spent the past hour attempting to make a successful bunshin, but the same end result was always the same. The ghostly copy with no skeleton. He thought about the anger of the villagers. He wanted to be angry at them but found he could not. They must have a reason. When I become Hokage, they will forgive me and acknowledge me, he thought. So all the more reason to become Hokage faster. While sitting back, his thoughts drifted over to Hinata. After he had saved her from those boys in the academy, he and Hinata had become friends. They spent most of their time in the academy together, sitting next to each other in class, helping where they could. Hinata is pretty, he thought. How had he not realized it? Probably because of his long one-sided conversations with her. He smiled at the thought. But he was then interrupted by a blast of ki from the forest behind him. It had been small, but Naruto was sure he hadn't imagined it. He leapt up and began to investigate. His excitement to discover what it was caused him to forget to call for assistance. Orochimaru swore, the scroll, he had said it had to be somewhere here. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but the scroll said it held a powerful source of energy. What it didn't say was that if it so chose, this power could deny access into the ruins no matter who he or she was. On his first attempt, a large blast of ki had thrown him into a large tree and it had hurt. He was about to attempt again, but his heightened senses told him something was coming, and fast. Deciding not to risk it, Orochimaru hid in one of the nearby treetops, effectively cutting him out of sight. He watched with interest as a blonde-haired boy ran out to investigate the area where the ki had come from. The snake man waited for the ki to blast away the boy as it had done with him. His face frowned in disappointment. Why was the boy not being thrown? He decided to watch intently. Naruto was sure the blast of energy had come from somewhere around here. He wasn't exactly sure how he knew, but this was it. Looking around, he noticed that there was a large rock with a symbol on it at the edge of the clearing. It wouldn't do anyone any harm if he took a look, he decided, giving in to his curiosity. Unfortunately, before he arrived at his destination, the ground underneath him crumbled and he fell screaming into a hole. Naruto stopped yelling once he realized that he hadn't fallen very far down. It was only around 10 feet. This height, however, was enough to be a small room. But this wasn't an ordinary room. The walls were etched with so many seals that could only be opened from the inside, making it impossible for anyone to have entered. But if that was the case, how come Naruto was allowed in? He wasn't a genius, but if he was in the crypt, that meant someone or something had let him in. He drew a kunai and readied himself for anything. At the center of the room was still dark, as the only light was the sunlight through the hole Naruto had fallen into. There was a sort of altar made of stone that was dimly glowing purple with all the seals. But what had caught Naruto's attention was the metallic cube that was hovering above the altar and slowly spinning. After close inspection, Naruto realized that he hadn't ever seen this metal before. He never listened much in class, but he knew this metal didn't look like the type that was normally found in Konoha. It felt as if it was drawing energy from everything around it, making Naruto feel cold. He seemed to be hypnotized by it and slowly walked towards it and reached out his hand. The second he touched it, Naruto screamed in pain. The cube had flown incredibly fast and collided into his stomach, searing itself into his skin. Naruto dropped to the floor in agony as the cube pushed itself further and further in. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the pain receded, leading Naruto to black out. Unknown to him, the cube had entered his body, and underneath the spiral of the 8 trigram seal, there appeared another mark, the mark of a cube. On his right shoulder, appeared a purple symbol of a narrowed face that gave off a menacing vibe, and on his left shoulder a red symbol of a more blocky face appeared that had the appearance of a guardian. Both seared into his skin. Just as Naruto fell unconscious, there was an enormous wave of ki, much more than what had happened against Orochimaru. The massive energy came from Naruto's body, and the first wave completely leveled the ruin to make a crater. 4 more massive blasts followed in quick succession before the boy finally lay at rest in the center of the crater he had inadvertently caused. Hokage's office. In the Hokage office, Hiyashi Hyuga was in a serious conversation with the Sandame. He had been in the office when Naruto had taken the test. The clan head had then patiently waited until Hiruzen Ha finished a meeting with the elders. Hiruzen, who is Naruto exactly? Wait a minute. The Hokage answered before applying the privacy seal that separated them from anyone who may have been listening. Have you found out? The old man answered wearily. Hiyashi nodded grimly. He is Minato and Kushina's son, isn't he? The old man simply nodded. It isn't really that hard. How many blonde-haired people are present within Konoha besides the Yamanaka? And there were very few, Uzumaki, here as well. I don't know when they got married or when they decided to have the child. But as a close friend of Minato and Kushina, I feel guilty. I know you have hidden his true identity to protect him. But he doesn't need to suffer the way he is. All alone. If Kushina were alive, we would have been dead by now for how we've treated him. Therefore I would like to take him into the Hyuga clan. Hiruzen paled at the thought of Kushina before he sat in thought. He had never thought about how Naruto felt about being alone. To be honest, he thought the boy had been happy. But to be honest, the third couldn't really believe that his laws could protect the child. He looked over at Hiyashi and took in the determination the man had brought with him. How would your clan react? Hiruzen asked. Especially since they can see the Kyuubi chakra within the boy. Hitomi and I have thought of that. We have gotten the clan elders to agree, and we should have no problem with the branch members. They know what punishment they could receive if they disobey my orders. And we shall threaten any main family member who doesn't react well to Naruto by giving them the caged bird seal. You've spent time thinking this through, haven't you? Hiyashi. Of course, Hiruzen. Hiyashi replied. I suppose I also owe it to the boy, he seems to be inspiring my daughter to work harder. But I, of course, have to act firm and strict to push her harder in order to please the elders. What of the Hyuga elders? They may decide to place a caged bird seal on the boy in order to gain an advantage over you, Hiruzen asked. The Hyuga clan head scowled. We both know full well that won't happen under my supervision. Hiruzen nodded. I guess it is settled, I grant you permission to take the boy under your care, but first. The Sandaime was cut off mid-sentence as an amazingly large blast of ki rocked the building. The two bewildered men stared at each other. What was that? Hiruzen asked pointlessly. Are we under attack? He released the privacy seals and beckoned to the 4 Anbu stationed outside to follow him as well as Hiyashi as 4 more blasts shook the building. Byakugan. Hiyashi yelled as he activated his dujutsu. And he immediately spotted the source of the energy blasts. Over the Hokage monuments, 300 meters ahead. The team of 6 sped over to the location and Hiruzen gaped at the massive crater. Orochimaru groaned and cracked his neck to the side. He hadn't seen what had happened after the blonde boy had fallen in, but 10 seconds later he heard the boy screaming in immense pain. He had run to inspect, the curiosity egging him on. But that was before a much larger blast than before threw him backwards with enough force to crash straight through 3 large tree trunks, causing the said trees to fall. But before he could land, another wave threw him further still and Hugh was helpless against all the oncoming waves. He was grateful they had stopped. But what about that boy? He thought. The village would have certainly felt that, someone would be here soon. As if on cue, his teacher arrived with 4 Anbu and a Hyuga at the edge of a crater the size of a football field. Orochimaru backed up to make sure he was out of range from the Byakugan. Wait, was that a crater? Orochimaru's attention snapped back towards the site. In the middle of the crater lay the boy he had seen. But the boy was unharmed. It also seemed to Orochimaru that the source of the ki had been the boy. Next to the yellow-haired child was also a sort of altar. This is interesting. Orochimaru thought. Naruto. Hiruzen and Hiyashi yelled in unison. The boy lying down there with his top shredded did not bring out the best ideas in their heads. The two leapt down immediately and were relieved to see he was still breathing. What is this? Hiruzen asked in shock, these markings weren't here before. Hiyashi, take a look. Hiruzen pointed towards the mark of the cube and the marks that had formed on each of Naruto's shoulders. Hiyashi activated his Byakugan and frowned in concentration. Hokage-sama, there's something else in him right now. Before he had vast amounts of his blue chakra and the Kyuubi's red chakra in his stomach separate. But now the blue and orange are mixing very quickly, and there is also a black chakra. Let's get him to the hospital then. Even if the seal is weakening, I am sure that the black chakra and these new marks have nothing to do with them. He beckoned to one of the Anbu. Carry Naruto and follow us. You 3, I am unsure of what happened, but scout the surrounding area. There might have been an attacker and he may still be around here somewhere. Hiruzen leapt away, closely followed by Hiyashi and the Anbu carrying Naruto. Orochimaru smirked. Only 3 Anbu left to deal with. Inside Naruto's mindscape. Naruto woke up with his head hurting. He stared up at the ceiling. It was a sickly brown. He stood up and looked around to see that the walls around him were the same but with torches along them. Where am I? He thought. Naruto then realized he was stepping in some sort of water. Crystal clear but the same color as the rest of the place. It looked like a clean sewer. So my jailer has finally come to see me. Naruto whirled round in shock at the deep voice laced with killing intent. He then saw the great cage with golden bars with a spiraling lock that looked very much like the one on his stomach. He also noticed the large red eye that glared back at him from the darkness through the bars. Are you the Kyuubi? He asked. So you recognize me, brat? Now let me out so I can kill you. The Kyuubi roared while flashing all 9 of his tails behind the golden bars. That doesn't sound like a good deal. How about Power Boy? The Kyuubi offered. The Biju knew that the more of his power the kid used, the more the seal would weaken. Come, have some of this power and do as you wish with it. Why would I want your power? I don't need it. Your power is probably the reason the villagers hate me. Naruto said sadly. I've always wondered why they did that, looking at me with those cold eyes of hate and calling me, demon. I never knew why, until now. But if they know that you're sealed in me, how could they not hate the one who attacked their village? They hate me because of you. I suffered because of you. Naruto yelled back. At this the Kyuubi quietened down and settled back into the dark, glaring at Naruto with crimson eyes. The Kyuubi took this as an opportunity to look through the boy's memories in silence. Naruto however spotted the cube he had seen before he blacked out. It was floating in the same way it had been earlier and it was on the Kyuubi's side of the fence. Kyuubi, where are we? We are in your mind. The Kyuubi grumbled reluctantly. Then what is that? Naruto pointed to the floating cube. The Kyuubi spotted the object and stood up to inspect it. As he neared it however, it seemed to have triggered something as an enormous robot roughly the same size as Kurama came into view. It was humanoid in form with blue and red markings. It didn't get very far before one of Kurama's tails lashed out and struck it with immense force. The robot was blasted away before it slammed into the cage's opposite wall. Kurama growled ferociously and laced the air with killing intent. The robot stood up quickly with its hands raised up in surrender. I mean no harm, the robot stated. I am a representative of the cube and I can explain why it is here. The angry Biju just glared at the robot, still tensed for a fight. After a while, Naruto said, it's fine Kyuubi, he doesn't seem to mean any harm. As soon as you think he's a threat, do what you want to him. He's on your side of the gate anyway. The Kyuubi looked from Naruto back to the robot before it grumbled and lay back down in its corner in the dark, glaring at the intruder. Carry on. Naruto motioned to the new addition. Understood. The robot relaxed. I am Optimus Prime, for now I shall represent the cube. It is from another planet known as Cybertron. There was an enormous civil war there between beings such as myself. The cube decided that it was no longer safe to be protected by us and decided to take countermeasures. It absorbed all our consciousness, friend and foe alike, and thought it was safe. It was wrong however. It couldn't simply obtain all of us. There was a small but very powerful group that remained intent on destroying the cube and therefore everyone within it. This group is under the orders of the creators. Fearing once again for its safety, the cube launched itself into outer space, in search of a protector. Those intent on destroying it have been searching for it ever since. After many years it finally landed here on Earth, far before the time any of you were born. Naruto frowned. Oh man, a history lesson. I've had enough of that. The robot's story however had caught the Kyuubi's attention. Shut up brat, he's still talking. Naruto pouted and looked away. The robot took this opportunity to continue. Ever since then it has been steadily watching and absorbing information about this world. With the exception of the knowledge hidden within scrolls and what's currently going on in people's minds, this cube knows almost everything. The massive Biju raised its head, obviously interested. But I thought it came here for protection. It interrupted with a slight frown. Patience friend, Optimus answered patiently. Ever since that time it has been waiting for a container with a strong, forgiving soul. Both Prime and the Biju glanced at Naruto who was still pouting, obviously not paying attention. That one container would be sure to protect the cube while using its power for the better benefit of the container's planet. Those who have come to seek the cube without the requirements could never come close to it. The cube built itself a small shrine, where it patiently waited for the one. So this boy, he is the one the cube has chosen. The Kyuubi looked at Naruto and sized him up. Kurama, this is the being the cube has chosen. The Kyuubi glanced back towards Optimus. But what is the cube doing here inside Naruto if he was only meant to protect it? This is how it is meant to be protected. Inside the body of its host and granting the host its power. Much like yourself Kurama. Naruto is now the Jinchuriki of the cube. Unlike you however, the power it contributes is not chakra. The Biju sat and thought until something struck it. You know my name. He stared at the robot intently. How? Optimus pointed at the cube. I already explained that this cube knows a great many things about this planet. So your name's Kurama, huh? Kyuubi has a name, it seems. Naruto smirked. That doesn't change anything, brat. Kurama glared at the yellow-haired boy. Kurama then assessed the situation. Before cocking his head back to the robot. I am sure you have much more information to share, Prime. That is for another time. There is a risk of Naruto's mind overloading should we overfill it with information. Right now he should simply know that the power the cube grants is gradual and will increase as his own. Naruto leapt up and got both the giant's attention. So you mean now I have two sources of power? Yada. I'm awesome, you know. Now I can really be Hokage. Kurama spared the boy a glance. Prime. We can share information while this boy is awake and then you can tell me how much you know. As for you, Naruto, the Kyuubi's gaze settled onto the boy, it's time to wake up. Naruto shielded his eyes as the intense white light filled his vision. When his eyes adjusted, he looked around to see a large hospital room. And he wasn't alone. He stared into the large white eyes of a stern man that was inspecting his face and Naruto screamed. Hiruzen ran in through the door wondering what had gone wrong when he noticed Hiashi continuously staring at the boy. Naruto, what happened? Scary old man was staring at me, Gigi. Naruto cried. Hiruzen burst out laughing. Naruto, don't worry. This is Hiashi Hyuga, Hinata's father. Naruto stopped screaming and studied the man intently while rubbing his chin as if stroking an imaginary beard. Hinata must look like her mother then, she's pretty, but this man is scary. The whole time Hiashi remained his strict facade and without a word just continued staring at He-boy while inside he found himself amused. Hiruzen however burst out laughing. Naruto, don't make him angry, that, scary man, is who you will be living with. Naruto's mouth dropped. He stared back at the sandaime and began begging. Nanny. Gigi, what have I done? I'm sorry. Hiruzen smirked. Nothing really, Naruto, I have simply decided that you need to live with him. Naruto's gaze slowly drifted to the Hyuga clan head. Hi Gigi. I'll do it. On one condition. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. Do I still get to eat ramen? The old man's sweat dropped. Of course Naruto, you can't seem to live without it. Hiruzen laughed at Hiyashi's expression before sobering. Back to serious matters, Naruto. What happened to you up there? Why were you up there? Naruto scratched his head in thought. I remember being on top of the Yondaime's head, then I felt a small ki blast so I followed it to this clearing. Then I fell into a hole and saw a cube. That's the last thing I remember. Naruto decided to hold back the information about the Kyuubi and the cube that was now sealed within him. Hiashi looked at the boy and decided Naruto was just fine. He spoke for the first time. Naruto, get ready to pack your things, you're coming with me. Naruto shivered before jumping off the bed excitedly. Hiashi-sama, I'm going to my apartment, follow me. Naruto managed to get out before dashing away. Hiashi moved towards Hiruzen and whispered. The other three Anbu have not reported back. Hiruzen nodded solemnly. I'll get some others and inspect that area. Hiruzen whispered back. Hiashi nodded slightly before heading after Naruto. Meanwhile, Orochimaru snapped the neck of the third Anbu and chuckled to himself. They had been surprisingly easy to deal with. No match at all for one of the legendary Sannin. The snake man turned his attention to the altar and ventured down to the center of the small crater. Without the cube to repel him, Orochimaru managed to get close enough without being violently repelled. He studied the grains of powder the cube had left behind and chuckled again. Now what may I do with this? He asked himself before opening a scroll and sealing around 4 handfuls of powder. It won't hurt to find out. And done. That's a wrap, people. First chapter down, many more to go. So I think that this one turned out pretty well, but it's your feedback that will cement. Konoha Naruto's apartment. Is this all you're bringing? Hiashi asked the blonde-haired boy in his apartment. Hi, scary man. I don't own much anyway. Naruto replied as he stalked the two small bags he owned. While Naruto was busy packing, the clan head decided to take a look around the apartment to help him get to know the boy better. There was nothing much in the sense of decoration. Aside from the bed and the bedside table, there was only a central wooden table with 4 wooden chairs to match. Then there were the cabinets over the sink that lacked any sort of cooking equipment except for a water boiler. Curious, he opened the cabinets and was surprised when piles of instant ramen cascaded down from them and scattered at his feet. "Scary man, I'm done with the first bag," Naruto yelled triumphantly as he appeared in front of Hiyashi. After a quick look around, the Hyuga noticed that there was nothing else for Naruto to put in the second bag. "What are you going to put in the second bag?" he asked the blonde boy, who shocked him when he began shoveling the pile of instant ramen into the second bag until it was fit to burst. Not that he didn't manage to fill it before then, however. Hiyashi had found some useful information. This kid lived on ramen. "Yes, scary man, I'm ready to go," Naruto shouted excitedly. Hiyashi flinched at the disrespect but then realized that this boy had had no one to raise him properly. Until now, of course. He thought before following Naruto out the door. He walked on ahead with the bags until Naruto caught up after locking the door, and the boy walked alongside Hiyashi with his hands behind his head wearing a stupid grin. Looking around Naruto, Hiyashi noticed the hateful glares that followed in the young man's wake. Naruto didn't seem to be affected by it and kept the grin plastered on, but Hiyashi knew better. Scowling, the clan head glared menacingly at anyone who turned their way, and sure enough, the onlookers gave up and returned to whatever they had been doing. As they approached the Hyuga gate, the glare the 2 guards gave Naruto didn't escape Hiyashi's notice. After Naruto entered the gates to the Hyuga compound, Hiyashi stopped in between the guards and released a small surge of killing intent. "Anyone who doesn't make this boy feel at home will be punished," he added bluntly. The 2 guards gulped and answered in unison, "Hi, Hiyashi-sama." Satisfied, the clan head followed Naruto behind one of the courtyards as the boy sneezed. Hyuga compound. Unknown to them behind the courtyard, Hinata was nervously glancing up at her mother, wondering if she had just told her the truth. "NN Naruto K-kun, is G going to live with us?" Hinata bit her nails nervously as her mother informed her. Hitomi found her daughter's reaction incredibly hilarious and burst out laughing. "Oh, come on now, dear, would you prefer for him to be living all alone?" Hitomi teased. Hinata shook her head quickly before blushing and looking down once again. Hanabi chose this moment to appear and greet her older sibling and mother. She did so formally and bowed. "Now Hanabi, there's no need to be so formal. Ka-san, why is Nei-chan red like that? Is she sick?" Hanabi walked up worriedly to her older sister to feel her head. Once again their mother giggled like a child. "Hanabi, your sister is like this because she likes a boy." Hitomi smirked evilly. Hanabi immediately caught on. "Ka-san." Hinata nervously tugged her mother's robes as her sister leapt up to continue messing. "Ooh," Hanabi poked her sister, "who is it him?" Hinata looked into the eyes of her sister and she could swear she saw a hungry cat, getting ready for the kill. Hitomi chose this time to intervene and spoke in a dismissive tone. "Oh, a certain blonde boy with spiky hair." Hanabi sat back and pretended to be deep in thought while thinking aloud. "Who might that be? He wears orange too," Hitomi added. "Ka-san, no." Hinata squealed into her mother's leg. "I can only think of one person then," Hanabi concluded. "Hi Hanabi, it is Uzumaki Naruto." At that exact moment Naruto rounded the corner of the compound with Hiyashi, who was carrying what little Naruto had brought with him. "Was someone calling me?" he asked innocently. Hinata looked between her mother and Naruto before blushing a very dark red and promptly fainting. Naruto leapt toward her just in time to slow her fall while mother and daughter began giggling and exchanging knowing looks. Hiyashi looked at his family and raised an eyebrow. A few minutes later, Hinata opened her eyes again and stared at the cerulean blue eyes that gazed back at her. "Pretty eyes," she said admiringly. "Huh, Hinata. Pretty eyes." Naruto looked at her with a confused look on his face. When Hinata came to her senses, she realized that those eyes could only belong to Naruto, and that she had just said her opinion out loud. This added to the fact that she was in someone's arms and the only arms close enough were. And she fainted again. Naruto looked at Hinata, obviously clueless regarding the current situation. Those few seconds he had gazed into her eyes. Pretty, he thought to himself. Which was why he had been shocked when Hinata mirrored his exact thoughts before fainting again. He shook her lightly before looking to her father for help. Meanwhile, Hitomi had just whispered the situation to Hiyashi, who was doing his best to retain his composure while nodding in understanding. He got up to carry Hinata while the other two girls in his life laughed themselves silly. Naruto swore he could see the beginnings of a smile forming at the edges of Hiyashi's mouth. To the clueless boy it seemed as if he was the only one who had absolutely no clue as to what was going on. But watching the laughter, Naruto felt at home and he smiled. I could live here, he decided. His closest friend was here with him anyway, and that in itself already served as a bonus. Right before Hiyashi entered his room with his daughter in his arms, he turned to Naruto. Neji shall assist you with your bags and take you to your room. A boy around Naruto's age appeared from the courtyard and lifted Naruto's bags and began to lead the way. Naruto immediately decided there was something he didn't like about this Neji. It was as if there was an air of arrogance that surrounded the Hyuga boy. Reluctantly, Naruto left the still laughing mother and daughter. Both seemed to be thrown into a renewed fit of laughter every time he caught their eye. Naruto knew who Neji was from the academy, since they were in the same class. The boy was a Hyuga prodigy, on par even with Uchiha Sasuke. But other than that, Naruto had never had much reason to notice the boy dressed in traditional Hyuga robes similar to Hiyashi's. When they arrived at his room, Neji simply dropped the bags and before walking away, informed Naruto that he was expected to dine with Hiyashi and his family later that night. Their dining hall is at the end of the corridor straight ahead. He pointed. Naruto nodded. Arigato, he managed to get in before the pale-eyed boy walked back out through the door. Neji then turned around to face Naruto, then scoffed. Naruto could read Neji's implications like a book. What did an inferior like you do to end up here? In that small second of time Naruto decided he and Neji would not be friends. He may not hate Neji, but he disliked him to a great degree. This was not the hate of the village those pale eyes signified. It was alleged superiority over the other. And Naruto would be having none of it. He shook his head from the distraction. It could wait. The boy clad in orange then started packing away his few clothes and belongings before lining up his ramen cups along the wall. When that was set he gave a nod of approval at his work, then left his room in search of someone to talk to. Namely, Hinata. On his way there he passed an old man heading in the opposite direction Naruto was. Time seemed to slow as the two males caught each other's eye and they both studied the other intently. Naruto looked at the white eyes of this man and forced himself not to cringe. Whereas on Hinata the white eyes were a symbol of beauty, on this man they were deadly weapons which he seemed to always wear. The older man was also watching him intently, not bothering to mask his distaste of the boy. Then they passed each other, slightly nudging each other's clothes, and the moment was gone. Hyuga Hyuta turned to gaze at Naruto's back as the blonde boy walked away. He wondered what Hiyashi had intended to bring the beast into the compound itself. How could they be sure it was safe? He'd have to wait and observe. If the boy was any sort of threat, he would deal with it. Satisfied with his conclusion he carried on his way. After a few minutes, Naruto managed to locate Hinata's room. He knocked gently on the door. Hinata, may I come in? Unknown to him on the other side of the door Hinata was desperately trying not to faint. He came looking for me. One side of her squealed in delight. But for what? Another argued. Hinata, I just want to talk. He looked for me to talk to me. Get a grip. You've been his best friend for 2 years. Her inner thoughts finished arguing and Hinata steadied herself to open the door a little to peek out. The second she saw Naruto's face she lost her nerve again and slammed the door in his face while she leant back against the door breathing heavily. Begging herself not to faint. Meanwhile Naruto scratched his head in thought. What was that about? He wondered. Well, he would wait till Hinata was ready to let him in. When Hinata was certain she wouldn't faint, she opened the door fully and she gasped in shock to see Naruto still standing there. Although she had resolved herself to not fainting in his presence, stuttering was a different issue altogether. Naruto-kun, why you're still here? Without anything to grab, Hinata's fingers were unsure of what to do and she was unconsciously playing with them while she avoided Naruto's gaze. Where else would I go, Hinata-chan? You're my only friend here and I've got nobody else to talk to. Hinata looked up to meet the blue eyes of Naruto. Oh, of course, see, come in, Naruto-kun. She opened the door wider to allow him entrance, closing the door after him. Naruto took in the plain white room with the sole large wardrobe standing in the corner. Other than that, it was simply a normal room save for the few plushies and the dressing table next to the wardrobe. Hinata took this chance to get out 2 cushions and set them on the floor at the center of the room. She sat down on one of them and began playing with fingers again, unsure of what she was meant to do in a situation such as this one. Fortunately for her, Naruto started conversation almost immediately while she sat back to listen as she always did. "Nay, Hinata-chan, how was your day?" he asked casually and plopped himself down on the remaining cushion. Hinata looked up at Naruto as she answered, but this was proving a difficult task, partly due to the fact that looking at the grin was distracting her from what she was trying to say while she was doing her best to answer his question. It was fun na Naruto-kun, she started glancing up then back down again almost immediately in embarrassment. His attention was all hers. Slapping herself mentally, she looked back up. After we met you this morning, me and Ka-san went grocery shopping. Did you get ramen? Naruto asked with a hopeful expression on his face. No. Naruto's face dropped in disappointment while Hinata giggled at the blonde. We got something better. The Jinchuriki's face lit up in interest. Cinnamon rolls. Naruto slammed his face in his hands while Hinata laughed a little more openly. How can cinnamon rolls be better than ramen? Naruto protested. They are too sweet and they don't fill your stomach fast. They aren't even hot either. Maybe they won't fill a stomach as large as yours. Hinata countered, giggling harder. She had found a sudden urge to defend her favorite food and didn't even realize that she had stopped stuttering. And I like sweet things. She added defensively. You can't slurp cinnamon rolls. You can't nibble ramen. You need to eat them slowly to enjoy them. You don't need to wait 3 minutes before eating one. The good-natured carried on for another good minute as each strove to protect their favorite dish. Kami eats ramen. For all his meals. Naruto laid his trump card. Then he hasn't tasted cinnamon rolls yet. Hinata fired back before they called it a tie and collapsed in a heap of laughter. When they had calmed down enough, Naruto sat up in a solemn tone. Hinata-chan, he called out. Sensing the seriousness in the air, Hinata caught the atmosphere and sat up slowly. What do you know about the Kyuubi? Hinata paused and thought. At the academy it said that the Kyuubi no Kitsune, 9-tailed fox, is a powerful biju that attacked the village. It killed many people before the 4th sacrificed himself to seal it away for good. What if that's not true? Naruto replied. What if he couldn't seal it away forever? Hinata's eyes widened. Then the Kyuubi is free. No, he needed to seal it in a newborn baby. That way the Kyuubi would have a living container, a Jinchuriki. It didn't take Hinata very long to figure out what Naruto was implying. Naruto, you were born on the day the Kyuubi attacked. Naruto nodded slowly. That is why most of the villagers hate me. He concluded. I'll understand if you hate me too. I am the Kyuubi after all. Naruto's head hung in weight, ready for the rejection. What he wasn't expecting was a warm hand to cup his cheek. The said hand also maneuvered his face so he was staring directly at a pair of white eyes. Hinata looked Naruto dead in the eye when she spoke. You are not the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun. I can tell the difference. The Kyuubi won't make me laugh, only you would. You have to be very stupid to think I'll hate you just because you have a Kyuubi within you. I don't talk with the Kyuubi or laugh with it. And I don't spend my day wishing I had more time with it. It's all you, Naruto-kun. Naruto placed his hand over hers. Thank you, Hinata-chan. As long as I have you then, I don't care much about the village as long as you're with me. Naruto stared into her eyes and she stared back, mirroring his thoughts. It's a promise then, Naruto-kun. As long as I can, I'll stay by your side. Hinata said with a smile. She had made Naruto happy and he had just said she was special. She really did feel special. Naruto grinned back. And proceeded to tell her about his day. He included every little detail from discovering the cube to the conversation in his head while Hinata was more than happy to listen. When he was done, Naruto suddenly decided that he felt bored. Hinata-chan, there's still some time before dinner. Let's do something fun. He took her hand and gently pulled the shy girl to her feet. 10 minutes later. Hanabi knocked on Hinata's door. It seemed awfully quiet in there, which was weird. Considering the fact that arguably the loudest boy in the village was in the same room as her sister. Curious, she peeked in if just to satisfy her nosiness. Inside, a blindfolded Naruto had his arms held out in front of him, searching for something. Her elder sister was quietly moving around and staying out of Naruto's reach without so much as a sound. When Hinata caught Hanabi's eye, she raised a finger to her lips. Hanabi walked in as silent as a ghost but giggled when Naruto somehow managed to connect his head to the edge of the wardrobe, even when his hands were in front of him. Naruto heard a giggle and in less than a second, the one who let out the giggle was compressed in his arms. Got you now, Hinata-chan. He shouted victoriously and began tickling the girl. The subject he was crushing was squealing and squirming in his arms. Nato-kun. It yelled desperately, stop. Naruto complied, but for a different issue. Nato-kun. He thought. Hinata doesn't call me that. He pulled off the blindfold and studied who he was holding. You're not Hinata-chan. He said after a moment. Of course not. The little girl responded while crossing her arms and putting on a false angry face. Hinata had found this entire exchange to be worth a laugh. Why are you here, Hanabi? Nei-san, we are being called for dinner now. And we are supposed to bring the colorful thing as well. As expected, Naruto retaliated almost as soon as Hanabi had finished talking. Colorful thing? I'm not colorful. I'm only wearing orange, ya know. And this thing has a name. It's Naruto, ya know. Nato. No. Naruto. Naruto. Nato, Naruto. Same thing, Nato Ni-san. Naruto's sweat dropped. Hinata took his arm. Come on, Naruto-kun, Tu-san and Ka-san are waiting. Naruto was more than happy to oblige. Hinata on the other hand was glad she was walking in front as she was blushing furiously while her little sister skipped behind the pair. In the dining room, Hiyashi and Hitomi patiently waited for the kids to arrive. When Hinata opened the door, both parents managed to catch sight of the linked arms before Hinata quickly disentangled herself. Both parents then exchanged knowing glances and smiled. Hinata sat beside her mother and Hanabi sat opposite the two. Hiyashi was at the head of the rectangle table and opposite him sat Naruto. Hello, scary man. Naruto greeted happily. Hiyashi was sitting up with his back very straight and his arms crossed to look more intimidating. But apparently, it didn't seem to be working on Naruto, who greeted him with a large grin. He didn't approve of the way he was addressed, but he could not really blame the kid. Naruto, since you are going to be living here with us, I have decided that it is only right we teach you some proper manners. Hiyashi started. He chuckled when he saw the look on the boy's face. I didn't mean it like that, Naruto. It's just that it is our duty to make sure that you have such things. Hiyashi then smirked at the boy. There has never been a Hokage without good manners. The blonde boy's sullen face lit up instantly. All right, scary man, where do we start? Naruto was now sitting bolt upright. Attentive. Hiyashi frowned. First things first, you address me as Hiyashi-sama, and my wife is Hitomi-sama. Understood, scary. Hiyashi-sama. When answering or responding, a simple yes or no with the person you are addressing and the right honorific should be used. Hi, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto added upon the effect by slightly bowing his head and keeping his hands at his sides. Hiyashi noticed the slight gesture and silently approved. He would catch on fast. Are we done for now? Naruto asked. Hiyashi gave a slight nod. Itadakimasu. Naruto yelled as he picked up and snapped his chopsticks. Hiyashi's sweat dropped. Naruto-kun, you are supposed to always be calm and patient when talking to elders, and you should always be polite. And the head of the table will say itadakimasu when the time is right. Hinata scolded Naruto, who had his mouth half full with his first bite. Gome, Hinata-chan, he replied with his mouth still half full. Hinata giggled. And don't talk with your mouth full. Naruto quickly swallowed his first bite. Gome, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto bowed his head slightly. Apology accepted, Naruto. Now then, itadakimasu. Hiyashi said before he took in a morsel. All eyes then turned to Naruto, who was sitting still. Naruto, why aren't you eating yet? Hiyashi asked. Naruto scratched his head with one finger while looking sheepishly. Ito, I don't really know when to start. This time it was Hanabi who giggled. After the head of the table gives permission to eat, then the guest is expected to take the next bite after him before the family. And don't eat too fast, Naruto-kun. Hinata added. Naruto nodded in understanding and began eating slowly. He was aware of just how much he had embarrassed himself in front of his foster family, and he was trying not to make any more mistakes. When he had finished what was on his plate, he was about to reach over to get a second helping when Hinata stopped him. Naruto-kun, you should never reach over the table, ask the person closest to what you need to pass it to you. Naruto glanced over at the plate that directly in front of Hiyashi. Hiyashi-sama, may I have the barbecue? Hiyashi picked up the plate and passed it over. Naruto, I have decided that Hinata shall teach you manners whenever she wishes. Hi, Hiyashi-sama. The clan head looked to the boy with respect, he was catching on very fast. After dinner, Hiyashi watched his daughter leave with Naruto to her room. He vaguely heard something about extra behavior lessons while Naruto grumbled. Hitomi nudged her husband. What's on your mind? For some reason I can't imagine Kushina as a mother. Hiyashi sat back. The red habanero. She was unpredictable, who knows? She could probably be a better mother than most. After a while of friendly chatter with his wife, Hiyashi stood up and led her to Hinata's room where the children were sure. The clan head was carrying a glass of water with him as he felt a little dehydrated. Long before they reached Hinata's room, they could already hear Naruto's protests. The husband and wife looked at each other and laughed. The protests died down as they neared the room and the couple took a peek inside. A branch member had already put a small square table in the center of the room where paper and pencils were laid out. They saw Hinata watching while Naruto was busying himself with something on the paper. Hiyashi walked in and saw Naruto's work. That's interesting, Naruto, what are you drawing? Hiyashi asked before taking a sip. To-san, Naruto-kun is writing, not drawing. Hinata stated. Hiyashi choked on the water and took a second glance at the paper. He looked from the paper to Naruto's glaring face and put his hands up. Sorry Naruto, that didn't look anything like writing and I couldn't read it. I mean, who else can read it? He looked to his wife desperately. I can. Hinata volunteered. She blushed while reading it. It says, Hinata-chan is pretty. Now why did you write that, Naruto? Hitomi teased. The boy shrugged. It was the first thing that came to mind. He answered. Next to him Hinata went an even darker shade of red. Hinata's mother then looked over to her husband, who was staring at his daughter open-mouthed. How could you read that? He mumbled, clearly amazed. Hitomi whispered in his ear, same way Kushina could read Minato's horrible handwriting. After a brief moment Hiyashi shook himself out of his stupor. Hinata, you have an extra task aside from teaching this boy manners. You are going to help Naruto improve his handwriting. Naruto opened his mouth to protest while Hinata answered her dad politely. Hi, To-san. Furthermore, Hitomi shall review both of you after every day at the academy to make sure you are learning. Naruto's forehead met the table rather quickly and rather fast, and the other three spectators winced. And if Naruto shows good progress, my husband will treat him to as much ramen as Naruto desires. Hitomi added mischievously. Naruto's face shot up and looked to Hiyashi to confirm the fact. It was the clan head's turn to feel like smashing his head on the table. Thank you, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto cheered. I'll do my best. Believe it. Hiyashi smiled while his left eye twitched. The boy had a weird sort of inspiration. Fine. The clan head grudgingly agreed. But it's getting late, get ready to sleep, both of you. And with that said, Hiyashi marched out of the room. Hi, good night, Hinata-chan, sleep tight. Naruto flashed her one of his signature grins before following her dad out of the room. Hitomi gave her daughter a glance and Hinata was in a trance. Then she suddenly snapped out of it and saw her mother smiling at her. Ka-san. Hinata squealed before burying her face in the cushion she had been sitting on. Hitomi laughed at her daughter before exiting the room as well. When her mother left, Hinata cleared the table of its contents slowly until she came to the paper Naruto had written on. She smiled as she put it on her pocket. He thinks I'm pretty. She took this thought with her as she laid out her bed for the night. This was a great day, she thought before closing her eyes. Naruto was going through a similar line of thought as he prepared his bed in his room. I have a family now. He smiled at the thought. And even though I have the Kyuubi, Hinata-chan doesn't hate me. He happily closed his eyes for the night. Hinata-chan. The next morning. Naruto-kun. Hinata-chan. Naruto-kun, we're gonna be late for the academy. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around groggily. It's still early, Hinata-chan. Naruto sighed as he pulled the covers back over his head. Hinata looked at Naruto and in his pajamas and laughed. The civilian shirt and shorts were just fine, but on his head there was a green frog hat. Naruto-kun, if you don't get up, San is coming to get you himself. At this, Naruto shot up and started readying his school bag at record-breaking speed. Halfway in taking his shirt off, he realized Hinata was still in the room, blushing furiously. Ito, Hinata-chan, you can wait for me at the gate. Hi. Hinata took off out of the room. Naruto stared after her for a minute before changing into his signature orange suit. At the gate. Hinata waited patiently for Naruto, he wouldn't take very long. While she waited, she spotted Neji heading toward her at the gate. Ohayo gozaimasu, Neji ni-san. Hinata greeted Neji as he passed her through the gate. The older boy stopped and glared at her, taking in her school bag and normal attire. So you are still going to the academy, huh? He observed. Hi, Neji ni-san. Why? Hinata looked at him confused. They had been going to the same class for the last 2 years. You are weak, Hinata-sama, there is no point in your going to the academy. You are destined to be weak and you will stay weak, no matter what you do. He glared at her as he stated what he thought was an obvious fact. Neji's words cut through Hinata like a knife. She felt tears start to well up in her eyes. That's not true. Both Hyugas turned to the source of the voice. Naruto was marching up to them angrily. No matter what you say, Hinata is not weak. Do not mistake kind for weak. Naruto growled. Ah, another one who pursues an impossible and useless dream. Neji countered. I don't care if it is impossible, me and Hinata-chan will never give up. That is our ninja way. Your view on life is foolish and pathetic. You have one destiny and that destiny is to fail. Well, if you are so high and mighty, what are you doing here talking to us? Branch member. Naruto fired back. Neji's eyes narrowed before he decided that these two were beneath him. He turned on his heels and headed toward the academy. Hinata was biting her nails again, unsure of how to react to the current situation. No one should hurt you, Hinata-chan, I'll make sure they won't. I promise. Naruto held out his hand to hers. Come, there's another way to school. Hinata took a second look at him before laughing. Nani? Hinata-chan, what's funny? Hinata laughed even harder at the confused look he had on before pointing at his head. The frog pajama hat he had slept in was still perched on the spiky blonde hair. Gah, I argued with Neji with this on. He stared unbelievably at the hat in his hands before shoving it in his school bag. After this, Naruto offered his hand again and Hinata accepted it as they took off down the road. She watched the back of his spiky, blonde hair rustle in the wind as she recalled what he had said moments before. Never give up. That is our ninja way. She looked back up at Naruto. Yes, she thought. Our ninja way, Naruto-kun. Ours. She clenched her fist. As long as Naruto kept moving ahead, she would as well. At the academy. With Hinata's hand still in his own, Naruto bravely walked into his classroom. The two stopped at the door and surveyed the classroom, searching for a place they could sit. Since they were the last in the year group to arrive, the only spaces available were the two at the back of the classroom on the left. Oi, Naruto. You made it. Choji greeted them happily as he munched on another bag of chips. Next to Choji, Shikamaru opened a lazy eye and waved a little. The two had insisted on becoming Naruto's friends despite what the rest of the village thought. Naruto didn't seem that bad to them. Although they had not gotten as close as Hinata had, they were still his friends. Without letting go of Hinata's hand, Naruto waved back with a large smile on his face. He's not letting go of my hand. Was running through Hinata's head. She followed him up as he unconsciously led her up to their seat. While he opened up into a conversation with Choji, Hinata happily stood next to him holding his hand before someone tapped on her shoulder. She turned to see Kiba grinning wickedly at her. She immediately protested in a whisper. And no, Kiba-kun. It's not like that. While she saw Naruto as the boy she admired, Kiba was the big brother she never had and he seemed to have all the instincts that came around being one. Being close to Hinata, Kiba was then ensnared into a friendship with the loudmouth. But he wasn't complaining. Second only to Hinata, he was Naruto's closest friend. The grin never left his face. He pointed at the shy girl's hand which was still clasped around Naruto's. Really? I don't think so, right Akamaru? The happy bark the little dog on Kiba's head gave in confirmation made Hinata turn an even darker red. The bark attracted Naruto's attention. Yo, Kiba. Kiba smiled and walked up to his best friend to join the conversation. Should I tell him, Hinata? Kiba teased her as he walked past. Hinata gave an almost silent squeak in horror as the grin on Kiba's face spread wider. Huh, you want to tell me something, Hinata-chan? Naruto gazed at her. She looked to Kiba silently pleading for mercy. I am going to sit now Naruto-kun. She manged to get out before scurrying to her seat. Kiba watched her in amusement. What was that about? Naruto asked. One look on the clueless face the other boy was wearing forced Kiba to double over in laughter while Akamaru hung onto the Kiba's head for fear of falling off. Hinata sunk lower in her seat, fearing the worst. Shikamaru opened an eye again and sighed, troublesome. A few minutes later, Iruka and Mizuki walked into the room and after another few minutes they had managed to get everyone under control. Mizuki started calling out the register. Iruka had been watching Mizuki. Ever since Iruka had taken Naruto to Ichiraku's, he had warmed up to the boy. He had realized how unfair everyone had been treating the child and decided to stand up for him. Since then, he noticed things he wouldn't have noticed before. Such as the fact that his colleague hated the young blonde. Mizuki. Iruka heard Naruto interrupt the registration process with no respect for his teacher and Iruka was curious as to why. You skipped my name again. Mizuki's snarl didn't escape Iruka. There was bad blood in Mizuki and he could feel it. I know where my name is supposed to be and you didn't call it out. Shut up. Iruka took the register before anything serious could take place and immediately called out Uzumaki Naruto. At which the young one raised his hand excitedly. When he was done he indicated the schedule for the day. Normal class lessons till the time is up. After the break you will line up here and we shall take the throwing weapons class. When we have finished then we will have taijutsu sparring. These exercises will also help us to gauge what level of attention you may need. Clear. The majority of the class nodded. Okay, on with the first lesson. The class collectively groaned. Iruka's classwork was rumored to be downright boring. And they had all been with Iruka before. Mizuki scowled and before taking up a desk to help supervise the lecture. At the back of the room, Naruto had laid his bag in front of him to use as a pillow. Noticing this, Hinata tapped his shoulder. Maybe you should start listening, Naruto. Ka-san will be reviewing us later and she can be very scary. Naruto groaned at first. Then he vaguely remembered when Hinata's mother had saved him the day before from the man with the sword. He sat up straight to attention and actually opened his notebook to take notes. At the front of the class, Iruka noticed Naruto's change in behavior and he smiled. At last, Naruto seemed to be headed the right way. At the back of the classroom, the desk in the center was shared by Kiba and Shino, who were next to Naruto. Shino's thoughts were not on the lecture. More instead on the talk his parents had had with him the night before. Flashback. Shino. Shino's dad called. Yes, Dad. He responded when he came close enough. Sit down, your mother and I have to talk with you. Why? Because it is a matter of concern for us regarding you. Shino complied with his daddy demands and took the seat opposite of them. Do you have any friends? His mother started the conversation. Shino thought about this. Yes, if you are referring to my classmates at the academy. Why yes. It's because they are the closest things I have to friends as they keep me company. His parents looked at each other with worry. His father decided to try and clear his son's concepts. Shino, simply because they are with you doesn't mean that they are your friends. Why? It's because friends are people who you go to laugh and play. Friends are people who will protect you when you need it and will stick by you. Then how can I get them? You cannot just get friends, Shino. Why? Because the feeling must be the same on both sides, where they care for you and you care for them. Then I have no friends. Why? Because I do not feel that way for anybody and nobody seems to feel that way for me. He saw the looks his parents shared once again. But tomorrow I will look for friends. Why? Because it will make you happy to see me with friends. But I will have my own way of finding them. Why? Because it will make me more comfortable. His parents nodded in approval. Good luck, Shino. End flashback. So now here he was at the back with a splendid view of everyone. Not many noticed him because he almost never spoke and didn't seem to interact very much with others. One reason he hadn't joined in was because he was afraid of how they would respond. He knew many people didn't respond well to bugs. Too bad since he was from the Aburame clan. The Aburame used insects in battle or in scouting and were very effective. The downside to this was that the insects fed on his chakra and therefore lived on his body. This would not sit well with most people. He had already thought about his test he was going to give. He would see how each of his peers reacted to different bugs which he sent out. Shino was very discouraged by most of the results that came in. He had brought in a variety of different species other than his regular beetles. The first one had been a girl at the front of the class who wore her hair in two buns which made her look much more like a kid. Shino sent down a fly that buzzed in front of her, taking her view off the board. She had been written down a great deal at this point and Tenten decided that she had had it with the pest. She raised her pencil and flicked. Shino gasped silently as his connection to the fly broke. This candidate would not do. Next he tried it on the boy seated next to the girl. Neji was staring at Iruka. He didn't need to take notes. The genius just committed them to memory. Shino had sent him a small grasshopper. The Hyuga didn't even look or hesitate. Whereas Tenten had used her pencil, Neji had quickly used his finger to send the poor bug flying. This one wouldn't do. Then came a boy with a bowler cut and very thick eyebrows. His eyes were also incredibly round. He had only been carefully swatting at the fly with no harm. But after a few minutes the boy's patience wore thin and he slapped the fly very hard. Another failure. Shino turned to the other prodigy. Uchiha Sasuke. For being a prodigy, the Uchiha was no better than Neji. Then came a girl with pink hair. She was dreamily gazing at Sasuke. However, when she saw the beetle crawling on her book she quickly picked it up and slammed it closed before turning back to admiring Sasuke. Shino winced at the feedback he received. There was a blonde-haired girl sitting next to the pink-haired one. This one was combing her hair as though it was an art. She stopped and inspected the comb before giving a small frightened shriek and tossing the comb across the room. Definitely a no. He continued this throughout the year group slowly, feeling what little hope he had crushed. Then he noticed the boy next to him. Kiba. The Inuzuka boy was freely letting a millipede crawl over his fingers. He was playing with it. Letting it go under and over his fingers. He seemed to be enjoying the insect. Even the white puppy on Kiba's head was watching the insect, fascinated. Shino smiled. One friend was possible. He then leaned back to get a view of the only other two in the class he hadn't yet tested. Naruto and Hinata. He knew them, of course. The blonde boy clad in the orange jumpsuit was recognizable all throughout Konoha. And the other girl was apparently a very close friend. He stared at them. They seemed nice and comforting. He prayed they would pass his test. And just as luck would have it, his prayers were answered. Naruto saw the spider crawling up his arm. What are you doing here all alone? He wondered. He gently picked up the spider and placed it on his open palm and watched it. Similarly, at the same moment, Hinata had found a beetle walking across her table. She also picked it up and began stroking it. Nay, Hinata-chan, look at this. Naruto held out the spider for her to see. Naruto-kun, I've got one too. Hinata replied, holding out her beetle. The pair then noticed Kiba with his. Kiba. Naruto whispered across. We need to get them out, they aren't safe in here. Kiba sighed sadly. As much as I hate to see it go, you're right. But how do we get them out? Naruto flashed one of his signature grins and held out his hand. Kiba caught the message and placed his centipede next to Naruto's spider before the loudmouth turned to Hinata, who placed her beetle next to the other two. Shino was surprised to say the least. These three hadn't only passed his expectations on letting the bugs survive, they even cared as much to try and save the bugs. Since genin teams worked with four, he would pray that he ended up on the same team they did. They would make truly great friends. Unaware of Shino's interest in him, Naruto stood up, stretched his arms and yawned. The lecture stopped as everyone turned to look at the dead last. He then began walking straight for the window. Everyone stared in shock as he opened it and seemed to begin climbing out. Naruto. Where do you think you're going? Mizuki snarled. Invisible to everyone but Shino, Kiba and Hinata, the bugs crawled of his arms and out the window. Can't you see Mizuki? I'm going out, I need some fresh air. Naruto countered dismissively, obviously buying the insects some time. Everyone stared at the open disrespect of a sensei. Sit down now. Mizuki roared, frightening most of the genin. Naruto scoffed. Make me. And Naruto was just about to slip out the window when he was stopped by a few words from Iruka. Naruto, please take your seat. Naruto got back inside and closed the window. The way he answered caught everyone off guard at the respect he displayed. Hi, Iruka-sensei. I apologize. Naruto responded, slightly bowing his head before taking his seat. Iruka could feel the anger building up inside Mizuki. He had to defuse this. His colleague was setting a bad example. Mizuki, I was supposed to have a meeting with the Hokage. Since I am still here, can you quickly check up on it for me? Mizuki sent him a glare before leaving the class, and Iruka was happy it had been just that. On with the lecture then. Shino was staring at Naruto in awe. He went through all that to make sure the bugs were safe. He would speak with them later. At the end of the lecture, everyone had left, eager to go out for the break, leaving Hinata, Naruto and Kiba the last to be heading out. Excuse me, may we speak? Shino caught their attention before they went through the door. Sure, why not? Naruto replied. The cheesy grin on his face getting through to Shino. Why didn't you hurt the bugs over there? During the lesson. You even almost got yourself into trouble for helping them get away. Naruto was rubbing the back of his head, looking sheepish. Well, they weren't doing anything wrong. And I had a feeling if we let them go around the class they might get hurt. Do you all like bugs? Shino addressed them as a whole group. I'm fine with them, Naruto replied. I don't mind them, Hinata added. Kiba shrugged. Depends on if it's trying to bite me. The three laughed and their laughter stirred feelings in Shino he didn't know were there. He wanted to laugh with them. Why are you asking anyway? Naruto turned to look back at Shino. I am interested in making friends. Why? Bug users like me do not tend to have many friends. Shino answered, waiting to gauge his reaction. Naruto's eyes widened in shock and Shino feared the worst. Rejection was imminent. Naruto then leapt up and down. Wow, that's awesome, you know. Come with us, I wanna see what you can do with those bugs. Naruto took his arm and led the way. Shino stopped in his tracks. You are not bothered. The insects I use live on me. And as if to prove the fact, he sent a few insects out of his sleeves. Friends don't care about that kind of stuff, Naruto said excitedly. Shino was gaping at him. We are already friends? Shino asked, still not quite believing it. Sure. Why not? Naruto smiled as he draped his arm around Shino's shoulders. And it's not every day you see someone who can control bugs. Not in Shino's case, he goes home to see them every day. This sent the group into more laughter. With Naruto laughing right next to him, he looked at the giggling Hinata and the laughing Kiba. He felt warm inside. So this is what friends can be like, he thought to himself. Hinata finally spoke. Shino-kun, would you like to spend your break with us? And show us some cool bug tricks? Naruto pleaded. Shino nodded. Yada. Let's go. Naruto leapt up into the air. Shino felt he should warn them. I don't have very good social skills. Then we'll just have to teach you. Naruto piped up. Now let's go, I'm starving. The other three were more than happy to follow. And it was on that day, though unofficial, Team 8 had formed. In the grounds. Shino observed most of the other groups of children over the place. None seemed to have it as lively as his group. Kiba dragged him over to a side as Naruto went to pull a prank. Hinata was still under a cherry tree and was wondering what the other two were talking about while she watched Naruto slowly approach Sasuke from behind. Then Shino came up to Hinata with as tight a poker face as ever. Hinata, why do you not tell him you like him? Hinata looked into the sunglasses in shock as she blushed, then to Kiba who was grinning smugly and leaning against the tree. And no Shino-kun. It's just that. You do not like him. And no, I do like Naruto-kun. Hinata was on the verge of fainting in embarrassment. Kiba had used Shino's inexperience to his advantage and she was now a deer trapped in the headlights. To my understanding, if you are interested you must inform him. Before someone else takes him away. As far as Shino knew, he was helping a friend. I agree completely, Kiba teased. Appearing next to Shino with his arms crossed, smirking triumphantly. If you have trouble telling him, then I shall gladly do it. No. Hey guys, what's going on? Naruto came up to them and took in every little detail. Aha. He pointed accusingly at them. You found out Hinata-chan's crush. He walked up to Hinata and poked her in the ribs teasingly. Who is it? Who's the lucky guy? By now Kiba was howling with laughter clutching his sides while Hinata was turning a red with a desperate look on her face. Shino was surprised to find himself chuckling. The implications of what Kiba had done had just sunk in. In the middle of laughter Kiba managed to get out, I'll tell him. Hinata looked desperately back from Naruto to Kiba and back and she promptly fainted. For the first time in his life Shino had found something funny enough to send him joining Kiba, both of them howling in laughter. The confused look on Naruto's face both before and after he had caught Hinata only adding to the fuel to their fire. Kiba, you're evil. He wheezed in between fits of laughter. His newfound friends had certainly made life much more interesting. Back in the academy training grounds, Kiba and Shino had finally managed to calm down while Naruto had not one clue as to why they had been laughing. To make matters worse, Hinata seemed to be hiding behind Shino and Kiba. Later. They were waiting patiently for Iruka to call out their names. They would then shoot kunai and shurikens at given targets and would be judged on their accuracy. Shino had already had his turn and had scored average. Out of 10 shuriken, 3 had hit the target. 4 were slightly off course and the last 3 had missed. With the kunai, he had yielded a little better. 4 had found the target and the other 6 were close. Haruno Sakura. Iruka called. Everyone winced at the scream that followed. The pink-haired girl all but ran to the front screaming, "Watch me, Sasuke. I'll show you how strong I am." The Uchiha in question looked embarrassed. HN. Naruto leaned over and whispered something to Hinata, who giggled. Curious, Kiba leaned over along with Shino to ask. Hinata giggled again. Banshee. They weren't very surprised when she got less than average results. Hinata had passed just as well as Shino and blushed when Naruto praised her. Kiba on the other hand completely missed all his targets with every shot. He failed just as badly when given a second chance. Beat that, Naruto. Kiba walked proudly back, grinning. Was that a challenge, Kiba? Naruto grinned back. You bet. When it came to be Sasuke's turn, the boys groaned as the noise level rose drastically due to screaming girls. While Naruto had his ears covered, Shino took his chance to ask Hinata a question which had always bothered him in a way. Hinata, what is it that girls find so exciting in Sasuke? Hinata thought for a minute. I don't really know, I have never bothered to give him my attention. She glanced back over to Naruto, who still had his hands over his ears. Shino smiled. I can see that. Realizing what she had just done, Hinata blushed again. Look, he's street started. She pointed out, desperate to change the subject. Sasuke took a deep breath. Even without the Sharingan, he was still talented. In the Shuriken test, 8 had hit the target and 2 had almost made it in. With the kunai, 9 were dead straight and the last one was debatable as it was at the very edge. Satisfied, the fangirls cheered while Sasuke himself covered his ears and walked over to Naruto. Sorry for the noise, it seems unavoidable. Naruto laughed. Can't be helped. You have a girly face. Sasuke pouted, it's not my fault, you look good too. I don't exactly have any girl that seems to want to date me. Naruto countered. A little away from the conversation, Hinata sneezed. Kiba and Shino, who had been in great positions to watch and listen to both events simultaneously, burst out laughing. Naruto was a blockhead, but this was taking it to new heights. You need to start working harder, Naruto, you're gonna stay in the academy at this rate. Sasuke pleaded like an older brother. You don't need to tell me that. I'm already working hard enough on the Bunshin. But all I get is this. Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto proceeded to display his failed Bunshin. See, a failure. Almost immediately in his own angry voice, he heard the words, what failure? That's funny, I didn't say that. And again in the same voice that had spoken earlier. Of course you didn't, I did. Hinata, Kiba, Shino and Sasuke all stared in awe. A perfect copy of Naruto was arguing with the original. Am I dreaming? The original asked. The clone slapped him, hard. Does that answer your question? Kai. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Okay, that was really weird. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Sasuke patted him on the back. Looks like Dead Last finally did something. He smirked. Hey. Naruto was about to protest when Iruka called his name. Let's just get this done with. He took 10 shuriken from Iruka and looked at the targets. Due to previous encounters, Iruka thought it was wise to stand behind Naruto. The blonde boy took a deep breath and stared where he was aiming at. Then suddenly his eyesight was tinged orange. He didn't notice it at first, but when he realized everything was moving in slow motion he got confused. Normally his foolish throw would be done in no more than a few seconds. But this time the throw was taking so much longer. He kept his eyes locked on the target and saw the shuriken fly in a close-knit group. Since everything was going slow he watched their flight as they spun achingly slow. Then they hit the target and his eyesight was back to normal. What happened there? He thought. Then he stared with shock along with everyone else. All 10 shuriken had struck dead center of the target. A little shaken, he pretended nothing had happened and collected 10 kunai from Iruka for the next bit. Before firing, he swung his arm in front of his face. It didn't seem to move in slow motion. He then focused on the next set of targets. His vision turned orange again. He swung his hand in front of him and this time it moved painstakingly slow. He then threw the kunai and he wasn't all too surprised when they found their mark. The same couldn't be said of the others. They had all been stunned into silence. His throwing stance was perfect. Iruka carefully observed. He had watched the arm swing back and watched it swing. The careful flick of the wrist and dexterity of the fingers. Other than that, the accuracy of the shots were the quality of having a dojutsu aid. Mizuki couldn't believe his eyes. What had just happened? Unable to come to a conclusion, he gave Naruto a second set of kunai and shuriken and asked him to repeat. Then metal clanged on metal as the second set struck the first set of thrown weapons, digging them further into the wood. Naruto would have shouted out and bragged, but this was too much. As much as he had wanted this, for it to come this suddenly to him was scary. At least his friends congratulated him. Moving on. Iruka called out. Taijutsu sparring, Mizuki-san shall call out the fights. The still slightly bewildered group of students headed towards the drawn circles in the ground and gathered around the largest one. You will only be paired up against one person today, each of you. You may forfeit at any time if you do not think you can win. Iruka declared. First fight, Aburame Shino and Inuzuka Kiba. The two friends smiled and took up their stances. Kiba started the match with a kick aimed at Shino's chest. The bug user stepped to the side and grabbed Kiba's leg towards him. Thrown out of balance, the Inuzuka spun in desperation and very nearly managed to land a stray foot into Shino's face. Shino raised his left arm to block the foot and let Kiba drop to the ground, where he rolled and quickly took up stance again. This time Kiba began using his arms. He swung a left hook at Shino, who raised his right arm 90 degrees to block the punch. He wasn't quite so lucky blocking Kiba's follow-up. After his arm had been caught, Kiba swung on the balls of his feet and landed a heel on Shino's left shoulder, throwing the bug user off balance. I forfeit. Shino exclaimed, holding his shoulder. Taijutsu had never been his area of expertise. He shook hands with. That was quick. Mizuki commented. Next match, Shikamaru and Choji. Shikamaru looked up. What a drag. He muttered. I forfeit. Mizuki scowled at Iruka. And this is what happens when there is the forfeiting option. Iruka shrugged. He had already said the rules. Next fight, Hyuga Neji and Rock Lee. Yosh. Now is my time to prove my taijutsu skills. If I cannot do that, then I will do 500 push-ups. Lee exclaimed. Iruka face-palmed. 2 months with Maida Guy and the older ninja had his influence already rubbing onto the boy, who, to make matters worse, was now clad in the exact same green spandex suit. You are no match for a Hyuga. Neji declared as he took up his gentle fist stance and activated his Byakugan. We shall see, Neji-san. Lee bravely set up his own stance. Begin. Almost immediately, Lee launched himself into the air and bombarded Neji with 3 dive kicks, alternating legs and spinning to give extra momentum. And he did this with dangerous speed. The Hyuga grunted in pain as the forearms he had raised to protect himself were battered with immense force. He wisely took a step back to avoid any more damage, which also allowed Lee to end up back on the ground. No sooner than he had landed, Lee was already throwing very fast and powerful punches across, and Neji was disappointed that some were slipping through and actually hurting him. He was too absorbed in watching Lee's punches, hoping to block them, that when the bowler cut boy feinted a jab with his right arm, Neji instinctively raised his arm to cover his face and Lee took the opportunity to kick his ribs. When Neji recoiled in pain, he left his face open as he bent low, which was a big mistake. Lee's follow-up to the kick had been a roundhouse kick that slammed straight into Neji's jaw. The bewildered Hyuga looked up to see the excited boy jumping up and down, waiting for him. He had to do something. It was time to disable the other boy's tenkatsu. When he stood back up, Lee rushed him once again, but Neji was ready. He caught Lee's right-hand punch with his left hand and reached out to disable Lee's other arm. However, he was no prepared to have Lee pull back his captured fist very quickly. The next thing he knew, he collided with Lee's bicep, and for the second time in the fight he was down on the ground in pain. He stood up again. He had to do this. He was a Hyuga. He would find a way. Neji settled into his gentle fist stance one last time. He ducked under Lee's punch this time instead of attempting to block, and reached out for Lee's shoulder while the boy had no chance to dodge. He pumped chakra through the tenkatsu on Lee's shoulder when his hand connected and the boy's arm fell limply down at his side. Since Neji was now behind him, Lee spun around trying to backhand him with his other arm. The Hyuga genius intercepted it and touched the other shoulder. He smirked as both of Lee's hands dropped by his side, useless. He had won. Or so he thought. Since he had let down his guard, Lee leapt up once again into the air, kicking Neji in the chin while he was at it. It was a vicious uppercut. But before anything else happened, Lee bicycle kicked Neji's chest repeatedly in the air. Right as gravity took a hold of him again, Lee performed a powerful roundhouse kick that connected with Neji's jaw. Neji had it. He was in pain. The second his face hit the dirt, he was up again, on the offensive. He leapt toward Lee and in the space of a few seconds had shut down his legs. "You are powerful, but you have been destined to lose." And with those closing words, it was lights out for Lee. That was an intense round. That there was a good example of the gentle fist. Iruka stated. Mizuki smirked. Next round, Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto smiled at the older boy. "Come on, I'll try not to hurt you too bad. Your girls would kill me." He used his thumb to point over his shoulder at the screaming girls. Sasuke laughed. "Come on then, let's see what you've got. Begin." All of a sudden, Naruto noticed his vision turn orange again. Sure enough, Sasuke and everything else was moving slowly once again. Normally Sasuke's punches would have been too fast to follow, but this wasn't normal. Naruto noticed he could see exactly where the punches were going, and he had all the time in the world to think of the proper block and counter. He began matching Sasuke blow for blow while everyone stared in amazement. His taijutsu form is excellent and his reaction time has also drastically improved. Iruka whispered to Mizuki. Kiba was staring in awe at his friend. "I need to train harder." The noise over Sasuke had died down when everyone realized that Naruto was holding his own. Besides Neji, no one else in class had managed to give Sasuke a good spar. Sakura started another chant with which most of the other girls followed. "Sasuke! Sasuke! Sasuke! Come on Sasuke, beat the baka!" Sakura turned to Hinata, who was watching the fight, but clearly not joining in the cheering. She knew Hinata was shy, so she decided to try and coax her. "Come on, cheer with us, that way Sasuke will win and prove he's the best." "I don't care about Sasuke, I want Naruto to win." Hinata answered without taking her eyes off the match. Sasuke was not able to land a hit, but neither was Naruto. It seemed like a very even match. "Have you lost your mind?" Sakura yelled. "Sasuke's the best. That baka is nothing." She turned to the fight and screamed in shock as Naruto managed to land a hit. It wasn't solid, but it was a start. Sasuke was grinning. He was having fun. He would have to invite Naruto once so that Itachi could train them both. He didn't know what had happened to Naruto to make him really good, but he wasn't complaining. Unlike Neji, who was always stuck up and on his own, Naruto would make an excellent partner. Naruto was swiping Sasuke's punches out of the air one after the other. Seeing in slow motion wasn't very hard. He could time everything perfectly. Since they were getting nowhere, he took a step back and sure enough, Sasuke followed. But because the Uchiha's footwork hadn't been very well coordinated, there was an opening that left his side open, which Naruto hooked. If he had been listening, he would have heard Sakura scream. Sasuke realized his mistake a little too late and received a powerful hook in his rib. But he also didn't pass up the opportunity to jab Naruto's chest. It wasn't enough to compensate for the damage Naruto had caused, but it was a start. Both fighters took a step back to eye the other. This time it was Naruto's turn to go in the offensive. The blonde boy began viciously pummeling Sasuke's forearms, which were always ending up in the way. After another few minutes of getting nowhere, Naruto suddenly aimed a kick at Sasuke's head, pivoting on his other foot. Sasuke ducked. The foot Naruto had been kicking with touched the ground, but Naruto continued swinging and brought his other foot down low. Sasuke immediately jumped over the foot. Suspended in the air, he was very vulnerable. When Naruto continued the swing with another high kick, it connected powerfully with Sasuke's ribcage. Sasuke held his ribs, he hadn't seen that one coming. He then remembered something he had done to his older brother once before. He broke into a run, then leapt toward Naruto in a long jump. Sasuke then curled up into a little ball and landed just in front of Naruto. Naruto was looking at Sasuke, he had just made his head vulnerable for a kick. Oh well, he thought. He aimed to kick Sasuke's head on his way down. Sasuke watched as Naruto's foot pulled back for a kick. Yes, that would make this easier. The second he landed, he uncurled rapidly, like a compressed spring, and he saw the shock on Naruto's face. The blonde boy clearly knew what was going to happen, but he was powerless to stop it. The Uchiha used the speed gained from launching himself to spear Naruto's solar plexus with his shoulder. Both boys met the ground and both jumped to their feet in an instant, equally winded. But they didn't care about that. Both their right fists were already flying and both connected powerfully on the other person's jaw. Both boys fell to the ground and stared at each other for a few minutes, then laughed. Sasuke stood up first and offered his hand to Naruto, who took it. "Iruka-sensei, it's a draw," they said in unison before laughing again and heading off toward Shino and Kiba. Sakura was growling. The baka, he took away Sasuke's win. Hinata looked to Sakura. Both of them did really well. The match lasted almost 5 minutes. That's the longest time here. I don't care. The baka wasn't supposed to win. And you? How can you not like Sasuke? He's the best. Sakura yelled in Hinata's face. Hinata could feel her blood boiling. Haruno Sakura and Hyuga Hinata, next match. Mizuki called. Sasuke. Watch me. I'm the one for you, look how strong I am. She screeched before stomping to the circle. Hinata shook her head, Banshee. Before walking towards the circle as well. Shino had heard Hinata and began laughing. The other two immediately understood. Sasuke on the other hand was shaking his head. Maybe I should start wearing a face mask, he suggested to others. All the noise then died down as they watched the two girls about to fight. Here is another example of the gentle fist. Iruka called out, simply to have something to say. Needless to say, everyone else could now hear the conversation both girls were having. You must be incredibly stupid not to like someone like Sasuke. I don't care about Sasuke, I have nothing against him. And don't you notice he never even talks to you? Hinata shot back. Don't insult Sasuke-kun. Everyone collectively sweat dropped. Forehead girl baka. She was talking about you. Ino broke the silence. Shut it, Ino pig. Sakura yelled back. Naruto is a baka. Loud, stupid and silly. It was only because Sasuke was going easy on him that there was a draw. Hinata activated her Byakugan. Don't insult Naruto-kun, she stated calmly. If her blood had been boiling before, now it was far, far worse. Insult me, I do not care, but if you insult Naruto-kun you will pay. Sakura gave a cold-hearted laugh. Now you know how it feels, huh? Mizuki was clearly amused by this turn of events. Begin. With a deafening battle cry, Sakura rushed towards Hinata with her fist raised. Take this, cha! Hinata swatted the hand aside and delivered a powerful slap to Sakura's face. Naruto winced. Sakura shook her head, then charged again with the same move. Hinata caught the right fist in her left hand and palmed Sakura's face, making the pink-haired girl's nose bleed. Hinata then grabbed a little of the long pink hair to hold Sakura in place as she gave 2 more powerful slaps. Then she threw the other girl on the ground. Sakura stood up screaming and leapt towards Hinata, who calmly stepped to the side and raised her knee. Sakura didn't see it coming. The upraised knee collided with her solar plexus full force and she dropped to the ground, out of air. Sakura stood up one last time. Don't talk about Naruto-kun like that again. Hinata walked up towards Sakura and punched her. The screaming girl collapsed. Everyone stared on in shock. The shy and timid Hinata had all but disappeared. Up until a minute ago. She held the knuckles that had punched Sakura in pain. Naruto was immediately by her side. Does it hurt? He asked concerned. Hinata was blushing again. Hi. Naruto blew on it before taking his froggy hat out of his backpack and wrapping it around her hand. That should do it. And he led her back to the line. Everyone's eyes were still wide, including Shikamaru's. Sensei, Choji began, that didn't look gentle. Mizuki had already gone to collect Sakura. No, Choji, that style is known to man as the angry woman. Iruka answered. Choji could only nod. Remind me not to make her angry. Sasuke sighed, Naruto's really lucky to have a girl like her. Kiba leaned in and explained. Sasuke's eyes widened. He's that clueless. He whispered back. He looked toward the approaching kids. Dobi, do you know? Do I know what? Sasuke looked at what the physical contact was doing to the shy girl. Hinata, if you don't tell him I will. Sasuke smirked while Kiba and Shino already burst out laughing. Hinata looked to Sasuke then to her other two friends in shock. Hinata-chan, what's going on? Hinata-chan. Naruto looked to the poor girl for answers. Hinata took one look into those cerulean eyes and fainted. Naruto managed to catch her before she fell. Oh come on guys. Every time you say I'll tell him, she faints. Who are you talking about anyway? Sasuke stared at him in shock as he carried Hinata over to a tree. He's dumber than I thought. A few fights later Hinata had already woken up and everyone was preparing to head home. Iruka chose this time to approach Naruto. Naruto, what happened to you? You were studying in the morning, and now you've displayed amazing skill. Naruto simply looked over to Hinata. It's her fault. Iruka laughed. So the kid had inspiration now. Well done Hinata. Nay Iruka-sensei. Why does Hinata keep blushing and fainting around me? What am I doing wrong? Iruka stared at the blonde boy incredulously. You'll have to find that out yourself, Kami help you. Hiyashi was following Naruto and Hinata from a safe distance, the two were walking home together. Hiyashi was worried someone would try to attack Naruto. Just in case, he would be there. Naruto was busy explaining to Hinata about his eyes and how they turned orange whenever he focused, such as the Kanayan during the taijutsu match. Hinata asked him to activate it and then look at her so she could see his eyes. There's an orange line around the blue of your eyes. She noticed easily. She tried to remain calm even as those eyes focused on her. Naruto on the other hand watched Hinata's face in slow motion. He heard her and understood what she was saying, but it seemed distant. As if his ears recorded sound and his brain registered it while he was unaware. When he deactivated it, the noise seemed to crash back down on him. Maybe it's a kind of dujutsu. Hinata suggested, either a bloodline trait from your parents or maybe something from the cube. Naruto thought about this, I'll try and ask Kurama and Prime about this later. The two children decided it would be better if they referred to the Kyuubi as Kurama since nobody really knew the Kyuubi's name. Hinata was proud of herself. She wasn't stuttering at the moment, even if she did feel lightheaded. Hey Hinata-chan, that was really cool what you did to Sakura. Why did you get so angry by the way? Naruto stopped when he realized that Hinata was no longer walking next to him. Hinata-chan. Naruto followed the shy girl's gaze and found the source of her distraction. Cinnamon rolls. Hinata-chan, would you like some? Naruto asked when he saw the dreamy look on her face. She looked even cuter and younger than she was. Furthermore, he knew that face, he had worn it countless times whenever he wanted ramen. The shy girl nodded then looked at her feet, twiddling her fingers. But you don't have any pocket money do you? Naruto continued. Easily noticing the fact. On matters such as these Naruto could be very observant. On other matters, such as Hinata's feelings, he had no such skill. Hinata shook her head. Okay, stay here, I'm gonna get you some. Hinata's head shot up. No need Naruto-kun. She stammered. He wants to buy me something. Rang in her head. No problem, I have my own money and it will make you happy, you know. Naruto flashed her a grin before running to the shop. He wants me to be happy. Hinata stared after Naruto. Naruto meanwhile wasn't bothered by the stares people were giving him. At least the shopkeeper didn't seem to mind. He bought 2 buns. I hope she enjoys these. He smiled at the thought. But when he turned around to head back, he felt a surge of anger. Those 2 boys standing in front of Hinata looked like they were making her cry. He began stomping towards them. Then one of them pushed her. That was it, this guy was going to pay. Hinata watched Naruto go into the store. She hated the way most of the villagers looked at him, but there was nothing she could do. Oh my, what do we have here? A boy sneered. If it isn't the girl that hangs out with the loser. Another one added. Hinata looked at them in fright. This wasn't good. They were much taller than her and bigger too. The 2 boys had ugly smirks on their faces. Ha ha ha, the only reason anyone would hang out with him was if they were brats as well. Oh wait, she is one, isn't she? Look at those white eyes. She's the weak Hyuga. Hinata felt tears in her eyes. She didn't know what to do. Yeah, look how weak she is, she won't even do anything. The other one pushed her hard on the shoulder. Hiyashi had been watching, silently raging. He was going to interfere when one of the boys pushed her, but in a flash of orange, the guy was on the ground. A very angry-looking Naruto standing over him. He sat back again and relaxed. Maybe things weren't that bad after all. The second the guy had pushed Hinata, Naruto's vision was filled with orange. All sound drowned out as he focused on the guilty boy. It seemed like an eternity before he arrived, but he was satisfied when his fist connected and the guy dropped. The partner was already swinging, but to Naruto, it seemed foolish to even try. He ducked under the sloppy punch and kicked the guy with all his might in the chest. Both older boys looked toward him in fear before turning and running. Naruto was just about to give chase when he felt a small hand on his arm. It's okay Naruto-kun, I'm fine. Thank you. Hearing Hinata's voice calmed Naruto down considerably and he deactivated his eyes. He smiled at her and handed her the cinnamon buns and Hinata squealed in delight. She grabbed one out of the bag and Naruto could have sworn she was going to gulp it down. Then she began nibbling it like a little rabbit. Despite himself, Naruto laughed and the 2 continued their journey home. Hiyashi continued to smile and followed them. He passed a dango store and temporarily went inside to greet Asuma, Guy and Kurenai. He quickly recapped the quick story to them and they laughed alongside him. Ah young love, the flames of youth have yet to appear. Guy commented before giving Hiyashi a thumbs up. Kurenai almost choked on her dango. Guy. You're ruining the moment. They all then turned to the pair of students walking down the street, then gasped in shock. There was a man fast approaching them and he had what looked to be a katana. A very sharp katana. They could feel the killer intent the man was giving off and it was not very hard to see who it was aimed at. A blonde boy clad in orange. The man was already directly behind Naruto and already had the sword set to swing sideways. Naruto. The 4 adults yelled in horror. Both Naruto and Hinata were in range of the swing and Hiyashi could only watch the scene unfold. Since the man was already swinging, there would be no time to dodge. His oldest daughter and Naruto couldn't end like this. Naruto heard the warning shout and turned rapidly, activating his orange eyes. The man behind him was swinging a very sharp blade horizontally. Naruto was quickly running through his options as he slowly watched the deadly katana approach. His instinct told him Hinata was rooted to the spot behind him in fear and shock. Not good. He was in no position to push her out of the way while he had his back tuned to her. If he dodged, then the sword would slice through Hinata. No. There was no way he would let that happen. Dodging was out of the question. So he did the only thing he could. He raised his forearms into an X to intercept the blade. At least Hinata wouldn't get hurt. Kurenai realized what Naruto was about to do, and she screamed. And there's a wrap. Hope you guys enjoyed the long chapter. Since this is an OE, we have decided to give things